Welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping you to provide solutions for your horse training in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley, and with me is Mark Langley, a globally recognised trainer. This week we have a very short episode for you. It is busting the myth on chewing and bits. This is a question mark that's come through from Megan in Australia. She's very interested in your thoughts on the long-term use of a side pull versus a bit. She's got a stock horse who you met recently at a clinic, and in that clinic you changed him over to a side pull as the bit was becoming a hard chewing focus when they were asking him to do bending and starting to use his body differently. She's continued to use the side pull, but folk at home have now suggested that the bit is better because it encourages the horse to chew, which helps to release the TMJ and other things. Megan doesn't think he's clenched and braced in his jaw in the side pull. She's popped the bit back in the other day and the chewing started up almost straight away, and she's had the bit fitted. She'd like to know, is she missing some key opportunities in his training and development if she only continues longer term in the side pull only? So there's a bit in this question mark. She's asking, there's a few things that are happening, and we would just like to know a little bit more about the link between chewing and bits and the TMJ. But first, can you just explain what the TMJ is?
That's basically the joint, the top of the jaw, so behind the eye, you'll see a little like a lumpy bit sort of above behind the eyes and below the ears. And if you look at a horse's jaw, it's the top of that jaw where those joints are, and that's basically all your chewing, grinding, and horses obviously grind and they move like sideways as well when they grind their food. So the TMJ joint is basically that joint that's sort of responsible for all that movement there. And, like if anyone clenches their jaw, where our jaws are up here, the horse is just in a different spot. It'll be a similar sort of thing. We can move our jaw sideways. We can like that. We can go up and down. Licking and chewing, all that sort of stuff that horses do, all comes from the joint that was responsible for that lower jaw movement. So it's all that movement available in the lower jaw.
Okay, so the TMJ stands for temporomandibular joint. And as Mark says, the joint is there so that horses can chew. So is that good then? Is having a bit in, if a bit leads to chewing, then is that good? Because if that joint can get sore, it can cause all sorts of problems in horses. And that is, quite well researched area. You can look into that. But if chewing is just an important part of helping that joint not get sore and helping it to be active in the right way, then I suppose the logical conclusion is if a bit causes chewing, then that can only be a good thing. Is that right?
Am I chewing right now? Some people chew chewing gum all day. Some people don't. Horses eat and chew. Horses don't chew. Horses lick and chew. Sometimes they stand still with their mouth closed quietly. They do what they want with their jaw when they need to do what they want with their jaw. And if they're not bracing and they're soft, nothing's going to happen when the jaw is soft and loose and not moving, and nothing's going to happen if the horse is softly chewing or eating food or anything like that. They even use the jaw to mutually groom other horses. It's just a joint. It's just a joint, and whether it moves or not, it's not going to really matter. I'm sure sometimes we sat there watching a movie with their jaws quiet, and horses are the same, standing under a tree with their mouth closed, not needing to move. That movement doesn't make movement's not bad. No movement or movement's not bad for a joint. Tension is, and holding tension and constant anxious movement, which bits do, like, I've got that's not so good for the joint because it's tense movement, it's tight, and it's not really doing anything for the horse. So as far as I'm concerned, a horse with a quiet mouth can lick and chew when it needs to. It can open its mouth. It can sort of do whatever because there's no tension in the horse to restrict that. So basically, all the tension I see in horses is when they're holding a lot of emotional tension. They're braced on the bit, and they can be braced in a side pull and grind. Like there's a horse at the last clinic. He's had 20-year-old, a lot of Western pleasure training, and even working in a side pull, you can hear him grinding his teeth. This grind, and that's just tension. But when he sort of let go of the tension, he started to blink and soften and follow the rein around, and the grinding stopped, and then the muscles went loose and the hind feet got loose, and he started to follow the rein. But the grind was him kind of holding on to the tension and bracing. So basically, it doesn't matter what you ride a horse in, the horse has just got to be soft. And all the years of riding horses and starting young horses, the softer the horses were, the quieter their mouth was, and that's in a bit. And when I used to see all these people say, oh, they've got to have a bit of saliva because it's going to be soft, and because there's a bit of saliva, and it kind of see a bit of saliva there, and that means they're actively chewing the bit, so their mouth is soft and stuff like that. Really, it's just the horse has a quiet mouth. If it wants to have a little bit of on the bit, that's fine. But if it's kind of chewing with anxiety or bracing or anything, all those things are bad. So, but yeah, all the quiet horses that I've seen, they look they might have had a little bit of moisture just here, but in general, they look pretty dry on the mouth, but they felt amazing in the reins, and they were loose, and, felt no problems in them. So basically, for someone to say you need to encourage chewing to loosen the TMJ, you just got to soften your horse to have a loose TMJ, not have to move the TMJ to soften it, because the horse can move that joint in anxiety and tension by grinding or constant fast chewing, or it can just lock up and not move it at all by just locking the jaw, which they do. But the movement doesn't create softness, just relaxing creates the softness.
So a quiet mouth is a quiet mind.
A quiet mind is a quiet mouth, and a quiet mouth just does the little things that are necessary for what the horse is doing at the moment, but usually, if you watch a horse, and if anyone came and fenced at a clinic, the horses that are standing there the quietest have just got nice quiet mouths, and they're operating with a quiet mouth. The ones with busy mouths are usually busy minds and troubled minds. So, like I was riding this little horse who he hadn't had a bit in for a long time, and she's ridden her in a side pull, but I said, we'll try her in the snaffle bit, because I think there's some areas where I think she'd be good in the snaffle bit in the sense of when we pick up a left, right rein, that sensitivity of just touching the side of their lips here. And she's quite busy on the bit. So, and I did say the next session, we should just put her in the bit for, an hour before a session and stuff like that. But anyway, she's busy in the bit. But I was explaining as I was moving the reins, as I create a bit of like a shift in the bit, I create a bit of noise in the bit. So you could call it noise or movement. I create a movement in the bit. So I move the bit, and it's her job to make the bit quiet again. So as you're moving the bit, the horse, when they search with their thoughts and then they come in balance with their body, they place themselves in the perfect position over the bit to make it go quiet again. So I was saying to her that I'm teaching the horse to try and find out a way to make the bit quiet. And because she had a busy mouth, as she searched and she started to find the answer, she stopped chewing, but then she'd find the perfect balance point. Now, the perfect balance point, I just got my watch hanging here. So if you look at the watch, imagine that watch there. So I'm just hanging a watch. Everyone who's listening is not watching. So I'm just holding a watch strap, and the watch, the circle of the watch represents a bit. Okay, so a bridle is designed to carry the weight of the bit, not the horse's mouth. So if the horse is poking its nose forward, the bit is actually sitting down over their tongue a little bit, because the weight of the bit is sitting back a little bit because their nose is poking forward. If a horse is behind the vertical, the nose is going towards the chest, which means the bit wants to sort of hang to the roof of their mouth, because the vertical is the weight of the bit is back to where it sits on their pole. Okay, so the pole is the top of the bridle there, where it goes over the top behind their ears. So basically, when a horse hangs their head in balance, technically that bridle is carrying the weight of the bit, not the roof of their mouth or their tongue and the base of their mouth. Okay, so what I was trying to show her was, I make the bit a little crooked, and she kind of searches and she kind of shapes herself in her mind and body to do that turn. And as she gets onto that turn, the bit gets back in balance again in the perfect, comfortable spot, creating a quiet mouth. Because it's the most comfortable spot when the horse is in balance. And that's why feel and pressure works, because you're creating a little bit of friction and the horse feels that, searches, and then the friction gets less until they find the most comfortable position, much like a rowboat. Actually the best example I think for people is, when you're walking on a beach with your eye, well, not even with your eyes closed, you walk on a sandy beach. You're not going to walk in the heavy sand. You're going to slowly make your way out to the nice hard sand that's nice and smooth so you can walk along nice and freely. The horses are constantly going within the hard sand and the soft sand till they find the hard sand sort of thing in their mind, in the sense of friction. So that's the way I see the bit, and it's no different with the side pull. But there's a lot of things out there that they encourage horses to chew and play with the bit. But I find the more they play with the bit and the more they make the bit go noisy, like they make I say the word noise a lot because I talk about white noise as a feeling as well. Like, just stuff going on that you start to sort of become immune to. So if you encourage the horse to play with the bit too much, then basically when the bit is still, the horse is creating movement in the bit all the time. And if the horse is creating movement in the bit all the time, when you actually got the rein still and the horse then basically there's no sweet spot because there's still noise in the bit. So then when the bit's noisy because the horse is playing with it all the time, then you've got to actually make a little bit more noise in the bit because you're pulling it but the horse never finds the quiet space. And the whole idea is when the horse is following the reins, it finds that perfect balance point where the bit's very still and very quiet in its mouth. And the horses that learn to play with the bit too much, it never gets quiet in their mouth, and there's always that kind of noise going in their head because of the chewing. And because of that chewing, then they're distracted. It's like a pen clicker, distracted. They get distracted, and then they're never in the sweet spot in their mind, or they never find center because there's that constant little thing that's going tick, 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 tick that takes their mind off something else. So I think the quietest mouths, as I said before, have the softest minds and the more centered minds.
So going back to her question then, if we know that chewing isn't necessarily a good thing for horses, it's not necessarily needed because they do it naturally in their daily life, then you're looking for a horse that's as comfortable as it can be so that it can learn as best as it can. And that might be in a bit, or it might be in the side pull. But if you're in a side pull, is she going to miss any opportunities for training and development?
Most of the things that I know that horse, and most of the things that horse could do, it'll do in a side pull, and it'll do it better. For what I think Megan wants to do with a horse, which is, a lot of different things, the horse will be fine. It can do a lot of things in a side pull. You can get a lot done in a side pull. There's certain areas in the bit where I do like a certain little bit of sensitivity where I can change the angle of the bit just quietly like that, and the sides of their lips and stuff like that. I do find it sometimes with some horses there's a little bit of that, just a light bit of sensitivity for a little bit of accuracy that I like, in a certain area where you want that bit of attention to detail. But I've also found the same thing in the side pull. And most everyone that I've seen that's come out of a bit back into a side pull, their horse has actually gone better than they were in the bit. So the people are getting more out of their horse in the side pull than in the bit. But if you get your horse quiet in a bit and quiet in a side pull, they they can nearly be the same, but as I say, there's a few areas I can tweak a couple of things and have it, in the bit that I like. But it's really not that noticeable in most cases. Is that like a political answer where I didn't quite answer it? But
so in most cases, a bit isn't needed.
You're not going to get, if the snaffle bit to a side pull, you can pretty well just get just about everything done that you want to do in a side pull, and it's easier to train the brace out of horses. It's a tool that you can go back to basics and really kind of go back to your basic yoga lessons in the reins, and then you can go up to your refinement in it. Whereas there's like in a snaffle bit, I might take it out to go back to some of my basic yoga lessons, where I'm really holding some of the brace in horses and stuff like that, so I'm not pulling through the bit through their mouth or pulling hard on their mouth. And then I might go back to the snaffle. And sometimes I like this, and if you're playing with it at home, if the horse can carry a bit comfortably, if your horse can carry a bit comfortably and you've got it carrying a bit comfortably and it rides in a side pull as well, what I like to do is do some in the side pull, some in the bit, because it's just good to have that two conversation. It keeps them a little bit more sensitive, I think, because you're doing a little bit in the bit, a little bit in the side pull, and it's just good. It's just if you've got your horse going good in both, just play with both, and you might find there's a little bit you like in one more than the other, and vice versa. Like I've found horses that go way better in a side pull than a bit because a bit than a side pull because they're sensitive on the nose, and there's this they sort of find it harder. But then I have other horses that are too sensitive in the mouth, and they go better in a side pull.
Okay, all right. Well, that seems to have given a good overview for everybody. I hope that has been interesting for you and helpful for you, Megan. It sounds like you can keep going in the side pull without any concerns. Thanks, Mark. We'll catch you again next.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jenny.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like it, share it, or send us a comment. It all helps in reaching new ears and helping more horses. And if making a change in your horse appeals to you, Mark offers his direct support and a diverse learning platform. Head to marklangley.com.au and grab your 7-day free trial.